Okay, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world. We know that we have people around the world that are connected to what we're doing right now. Thank you for joining us. This is our third Symbiotic Culture Lab connection. And we're just really thrilled that you've taken the time to be here today. Those of you that are here for the first time, I'm going to be dropping the first two trainings. You may have heard me a few minutes ago saying Richard had these edited so you could just find the gems. They're short, sweet. You can even listen to them a little faster and get them done in less than 30 minutes. So if you're here for the first time, we do ask that you watch those couple of videos and enjoy auditing what we're sharing. Some of this is going to be a little bit of a repeat of before, but we're really in action right now. We're in training in this Symbiotic Culture Lab, and we're all a part of the lab. So thank you for being a part of this. The agenda today, we're going to talk about what unites us and why we're here. We're going to be reviewing the Neighbors4Neighbors guide and learn more about this particular method that you can start in your community. We're going to open it up for Q&A because we're here to really support you. And in a lab, we learn most from your questions. You guys have questions and insights, and we want to make sure that we're providing all the information and education that there could be. Also reviewing the network mapping, and that may be new for you. We went over that last time, but we'll get to, as we dive in deeper, you understand that, and start organizing the food network connections, and again, open it up for Q&A. And so I have the honor of introducing the founder and the creator of the Symbiotic Network, Richard Flyer. This individual has been a part of building communities globally for decades, and he's been passionate about helping spread this beautiful, what I feel like this heart-centered way of living and being and creating solutions for a lot of the challenges that we have in the world right now, whether it be loneliness or hunger or oh my gosh, arts and music, things you love. It doesn't have to be challenges. It could be things we love that we want more of, that we want to see in the world. And so with that, I'm going to turn this over to Richard. Richard, thank you so much for your time, your heart, and we all are just so excited for your book coming out and your manual coming out, and thank you for all you do.
Well, Shannon, thank you so much for providing this support and allowing us to work with you in Brevard County, Florida as a pilot. And we're all kind of like both supporting you in your work, but also like flies on the wall, observing and learning, so that we can hopefully do that in our own community, our own region. What I'd like to do, and I'm going to try to do this in 2 minutes, which is almost impossible. So Shannon had asked me to share, kind of remind everybody why we're here. What is this bigger vision? And what I'd like to share with you before we go to that, infographic, it seems like what's happening is we're going from a global culture of separation. It's like we call it a taker culture, where it's competitive by nature, where money and power seem to be the driving values. And it seems like that's actually what unites us. We're all consumers on this planet, but that approach, that way of being, is seriously in question today, especially after global COVID, the lockdowns, and then now with the war in Ukraine. It's created supply chain challenges where even the CEO of BlackRock Capital, the largest asset management firm on the planet, has indicated that the globalization that we've known for 70 years since World War II is over. It's over. That is, that this idea that we have all these free-flowing markets, and we're in a place wherever we are in the world, and we can get our our cherries from Chile, or we get our bananas from Mexico. And it was the height of this kind of idea of progress. It's just turned out that while there's been a lot of economic progress over the decades, it's come at a cost, and that is instability. And right now, what I believe is happening is we're going from a culture of separation as this world order breaks down, to a culture of intentional mutual benefit. And that's the reason that we're here today, is that this idea that there's a new developing culture, many of us already feel that in our own parts of our lives, our work, our business, our communities. What we realize is that this is something we don't have to wait till the rest of the world makes a change, that we can begin inside of ourselves and also on our street, in our neighborhoods, and in our community, our regions, or by, we call them smaller bioregions. And that's the field of action today that's relevant to most of us. So this takes the pressure away from us having to worry about or try to lobby, national or global leaders, both corporate or national political leaders. It's not that that's something we're saying not to do. It's just, let's shift our focus to something we have more capability in making this change and helping in this transition from one way of life to a more collaborative, cooperative way of life that we actually have agency in. So that was kind of the overview. I hope I addressed what you suggested. So what I'd like to do is start with, if we're talking about bringing together people in community, over the last 40 years that I've been working and in understanding other communities, we really had crowdsourced, like, what are shared principles? And we went through this every time, and I think it's important. The primary one is the golden rule, which really is the basis of society in terms of the religions and faith traditions, the wisdom traditions, spiritual traditions for the last several thousand years. This shows up in every culture, every faith and spiritual tradition. And it really has to do with the nature of reality and the idea of, having this kind of intentional mutual benefit really reflects an underlying oneness. And it's not something that we do because we were trying to be good or we're trying to even do good, which is fine, but it's an action. Intentional mutual benefit is based on the reality that we are one. And it's an experience, and it's something that begins within and then extends outward into our neighborhoods and communities. So all of these principles relate to one another. So think globally, act locally. It kind of shows the locus of action, which is in our community and building a strong community-based local economy. We orient ourselves towards what we have in common rather than focusing on what divides us, which is really easy to do, whether in real life, face-to-face, or in social media. And we're building a connected organism. It's basically taking what's already there, all the good that's already happening, and connecting it. And it's not creating something separate. It's actually helping to gently connect what already exists, the good that's already happening, the organizations, the people, the businesses in your local community. Let's go down next section. And we've identified shared values: love, integrity, courage, service, and respect. And they have secondary values underneath them. This actually came from a crowdsourced meeting of 100 leaders and citizens in Reno, Nevada in 2006. And this process led to a group conversation, one community's conversation about what values do we share. And love is primary as an organizing principle. Love as a cohesive power that brings us together. And it's something that's invisible, but it's like gravity, but in a different realm, in a realm of self-organization and how communities come together. Love is that power that's really within us, and the capacity for us to be a unifying power within ourselves, our neighborhoods, and our communities. And that's something that we can continually increase and expand our capacity for this kind of higher principle of love, so that we could actually expand our influence just by being into our community and ultimately to the planet. Next. So like we learned from the Sarvodaya movement in Sri Lanka, the Sarvodaya movement is based on their own concept of shared values in action, in building bioregional ecosystems of people and organizations. Like it's like aggregating all of the existing power of, you know, the spiritual dimension, the social, the economic, the cultural, the political, all those coming together across all these silos. And we do it within each of these sectors. So we're practicing these principles and values, and we're connecting in these sectors. And these ideas, the idea of having a building blocks or sectors of a local community is something that's based on reality. It's just based on what people generally are passionate about, whether it's food and water, local economy, arts and culture, neighbors helping neighbors, local energy, housing, health and healing and wellness, helping people on the margins. These are things that people gravitate towards, and we're helping communities empower networks within each of these. We've chosen to start with food and water, building local food systems, and local neighborhoods, which also involves people producing food in their, you know, backyard gardens. So we've chosen those two because of the crisis now, especially the supply chain crisis and food insecurity that's now being felt around the world. Let's go to the next. So the involvement that we're encouraging is just at the individual level, is to really identify practicing intentional mutual benefit in all of our relationships and connections, personal and business, joining us on our weekly calls. It's really good to align with this principle. Many of us already do this, but by gathering together, and especially by gathering with others at some point more in each community, then we can harness that power and then release it to unify. So these calls are helpful, and they helped us to connect and support one another, remember who we are, why we're here, what we're doing, and having that sense of purpose and mission is very, very important. At some point, we're going to have a social network where we have a channel where people can share and meet each other within each region. Next is the level of street and neighborhood. Today, we're going to talk about Neighbors for Neighbors, a simple, easy process, step-by-step, of how you could build a street pod, a team on your street, and start sharing needs and offers in a very gentle, non-threatening way. The last is bioregional. So in addition to ourselves and our streets and our neighborhoods, we have approaches called symbiotic networks and networking, and that applies to bringing together leaders of existing nonprofits and for-profits in a local region around a particular need. In this case, we've started in Brevard County with food, and we're encouraging others to build food system networks in their region. Next. So let's shift to the first section of activation, and that's neighbor to neighbor. As you can see, this actually had its origin in Northern Nevada in 2007. And this was a broader neighbor network. So not only were people involved on each individual street, it spread organically to about 100 streets. And the reason I bring that up is each of us, as we learn to do this on our street, those that have the capacity or interest could also help to connect all the streets that are doing this into a larger campaign. And that's something that we're going to teach you how to do. First, we're just going to show you how to develop the Neighbors for Neighbors campaign on your street, and with the idea that it could eventually expand into what we call a neighbor network. Next. Next slide. And so before we go into this template and guide, I wanted to share share a story with you of how the simple action of organizing and connecting with your neighbors, literally with the 20 houses around you, can have a major impact on a region. I ran into a woman about 5 years after we did the neighbor, we called it Get to Know Your Neighbor Week in Reno, Nevada. Anyway, after she had done her activity, we didn't have a way to report back to show who was doing what all the time. So I wasn't aware that she had actually done a block party on her street, and it was near Wells Avenue. As maybe there's some Renoites here on this call. It's adjacent to a real challenged, low income, urban setting with some rundown buildings at the time. Anyway, I ran into this woman at a meeting, another community meeting, and she said, "Oh, I did the block party on my street, and it led to the foundation of a new association called West of Wells Avenue Association." So a full neighborhood association. That neighborhood association itself was involved in an urban renewal project that involved the city of Reno itself. And there was investment as a result of the interest in kind of helping this blighted area evolve into what is today called the Midtown District, right south of Reno. And it is filled with local restaurants and shops. And it's a place where at 9 o'clock at night, you'd see people of all ages walking and enjoying that area. And that literally all was catalyzed by the simple act of organizing one street. It led to the transformation of an entire neighborhood and business district, and untold millions of dollars in value, as well as thousands and thousands of potential connections made, and just the goodwill that was from that. So that's an example I just thought I'd share with you of potential. So let's go to the next page. So basically, this is a handout that you should receive today, and either in the chat, Shannon, or how. I think we're gonna
in the chat.
Yep, we're gonna share this this guide so that you'll have it, so that you can refer to it. So basically, what we're talking about is in the aftermath of COVID and the lockdowns globally. If you can just imagine the lack of trust, the isolation, and the feeling of just coming out to, like, literally physically see our neighbors, communities, businesses. That was a traumatic experience for humanity. And then to follow that up with the war, which has created global supply chain disruptions, and especially concern about the food supply chain. And that's one reason that Shannon had contacted me, was her concern to be able to, deal with this at her level in the county, Brevard County in Florida, to be able to connect the food system so that we're more independent of this global supply chain. And that's one of the reasons also underlying this Neighbors to Neighbors campaign. It starts at the small scale. Let's go to the next page. And so basically, it's all around connecting what we call needs and offers to help. So obviously, we're coming out of this huge global trauma, and fear of the unknown is really the primary challenge in all of us. And it's basically dealing with this fear, understanding that there still could be this isolation amongst neighbors, and people that are uncertain, like the war. I mean, think about it. We haven't talked about the potential for nuclear war since, it's got to be 40 years, since the 1960s. I mean, it's an amazing time to have to go through this, and this weighs on people. And then the isolation itself, as people, are kind of getting back to some type of physical interactions, creates that that underlying challenge and needs that we may not know of that are invisible. Offers to help. This is really at the basis and at the root of humanity, is literally the connections people make in their villages, towns, and really in their neighborhoods. This is where reality of love and support, loving your neighbor, it's happening now. And it's been happening for thousands of years. It's just something that's unrecognized because we can get into these routines. So on any street, there are opportunities for people to offer to help. For example, in some of our activities that we did with Get to Know Your Neighbor Week, which is the basis of this campaign, what happened was we found that people had the capacity to, they discovered a senior who had a lawn who was just unkempt. Their yard was unkempt because they're alone. They didn't have family. And it was based on, and even in the county where we were living, Washoe County, they figured that there were 10,000 seniors that were isolated, literally, that the government and other private organizations could not deal with because it was scattered everywhere. So an example of a need and an offer, you have an isolated senior, they had yard work to be done, there were families on this street, some of the kids would donate time, get to know that neighbor, and go and actually help them with that work that they needed done. That's an example of an offer. It's really clear. So if you're a neighbor connector, you could help connect these needs and offers. So it starts with a gathering, and the gathering is the first step. You got to remember that the idea is neighbors and neighborhoods and streets have different levels of coherence, they have different levels of isolation, or many streets could also already be together. We just don't know. And the job of the neighbor connector is stepping up and just, being involved and doing a first tangible gathering. And we're going to get into what that could be like, all sorts of activities that you could do. And then second, as a neighbor connector, once you've done your gathering, which is within 30 to 60 days. So, after you've done your gathering, then you're organically, you're really finding out about what those needs and offers are simply by going door to door to get your gathering organized, but also at the gathering itself, and then follow up, getting to know your neighbors. You find some of these connections of needs and offers. So let's look at the guidelines for this kind of work. Be kind, open, friendly, a good connector of needs and offers on your street. Neighbor connectors are proactive, not pushy. I really like that one. So this isn't about, being pushy. It's just about being supportive. If a neighbor's not interested, don't bother them. Just extend an invitation, like to your upcoming gathering, and just move on. You don't have to wonder about why somebody may not be interested. Everybody has their own right to their own space, and people, come around when they want to come around, if at all, and that's fine. Remember, you're just being of service. You're connecting people. You're not telling people what to do. So being a neighbor connector on your street is not like, being the head of a club. We're like, you're the head of an organization and you're like, an executive director. No, it's literally a different context. This is just an extension of people helping people, and everybody's really at the same level. By being a neighbor connector, you're providing a function. You're not creating a separate organization where you lead it or have to tell anybody what to do. The other is you're not pushing your religion or politics. It's about common humanity. That's the context. It's not about religion or politics or anything you're like passionately want to like change somebody's opinion about. All of those things are not relevant in this context. You're creating a new street level context, and loving your neighborhood and your community. And don't forget to have fun. Okay, next. So just to kind of briefly, the first step, you'll see this in the guide, in organizing your first potluck. It could be a barbecue, could be an ice cream social. I just put potluck as a suggestion. And you're talking about the 20 homes around you. It's better to identify a street level pod or a team. of neighbors that you may already know. You'll know on any street there are gatekeepers. And this is in social science. Basically, any neighborhood, any community have these folks that just tend to know everybody. They know what's going on. Those are the ones with the connections to everybody. If you can find them, even if you don't know them, you find them by just getting out and learning about your street. So it's important, once you find your pod, just select a date, and you don't have to ask everybody's opinion on the street. You're literally just setting an intention and a commitment to do a gathering on your street somewhere, whether it's a potluck in someone's home, or it's on the street, in your front yard, backyard, someone else's front yard, backyard, a community room, wherever it's comfortable for you as the organizer. The template is going to be shared with you that you could use simply. It's a one-page template that you can fill out. Makes it easy for you. Be creative, come up with your own templates. Then you're walking door to door. This is a challenge for many of us because we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know whether we're going to be, embraced. Oh my God, great to see you, or rejected. And that's reality. We live in this kind of time where there's fear, and it's important for the neighbor connector to just step into it, not take things personally at all, and just being understanding. That's what intentional mutual benefits is about. You're stepping into a higher place than just your personal likes and dislikes. You literally are stepping up to provide a function, like to actually do something on your street. So as Shannon likes to say, to be a good soldier. I think that's what Shannon said. And I look at this, it's a kind of warriorship, stepping up when people might be negative and being able to deal with it and not take it personally again, but just to be encouraging. So basically what you're doing is, as you're going door to door to invite people to your gathering, you're finding out gently what are the needs and offers, and you're taking notes. Well, you're not a social scientist. You're not a social worker. You're not from the government. So you're not doing this formally. This happens naturally. You're finding out what the needs and offers are. Seniors that are alone, single moms that might not know each other that could actually support one another. Kids that are maybe in need of support, running around the neighborhood, just maybe they need some additional adult guidance, that kind of thing. People might want to walk their dogs together. I mean, all these things are possible. Next is, once you've done your invite, Nextdoor as an online private social network is available, and it is not really being used this way, surprisingly. As a technology, about 85% of people use Nextdoor and remain online. So we can use that technology to actually promote these face-to-face gatherings. Do your event, and it could be a variety of types of gatherings. And then you're forming your street pod that is an ongoing several teammates. I think I'm going to just keep going beyond this. So phase 2 is basically how you organize around needs and offers. Let's go to the next page. I just want to keep going so we can get through the agenda. So this is an example of a flyer you can use. And as I see that, I see Marta and our dog Scooter. He used to be with us. We still really miss him. But anyway, this is an example of something that you could model yours on or do your own. And at some point, we'll have a variety of flyers that you can use to announce your first gathering. Next. So this is an internal document that we'll also have available as a standalone edit, something you can edit. So basically, how you document needs and offers on your street, you're doing it naturally as you organize your gathering and ongoing. These are the things that came up during COVID. As you remember, when many of us were in lockdown, these are things that became like top of mind that were identified. And Marta, my wife, and I, we were actually doing this ourselves in our street. And these are some of the needs that people may have: loneliness, need help with online ordering, grocery medicine delivery, somebody's short of cash or has no money, somebody just needs emotional support. And then you can match all of those needs with offers. And I'm sure all of us here can think about that and reflect on the needs that that you know, and the offers. And we can talk about that in a second in our Q&A next. Okay, I think we're ready for, is this Q&A now?
Yeah. And so I just wanted to kind of set the tone because we are recording this and this is our education piece. And so I didn't say this in the beginning, but you can put your name and first and last name and where you're from in the chat. But we want to use this opportunity for questions about the Neighbors for Neighbors. So we want to keep it really specific. If there's a question or if you're doing this or, but really keeping it laser focused on this particular topic. And to raise your hand, there's a raise hand at the bottom of the Zoom bar, or you can raise your hand physically and we'll do our best to see who's here. Okay, Carol.
On Monday, when we have our event, I would like to hand out those papers to be filled out with the people attending so that I can start. I put it in the next door. I posted the information on our next door,
Okay.
and getting some responses there. So I would like to bring, I'm glad you have something I can bring printed. And then should we let them know about this meeting on Fridays?
Probably at this point, it's good to keep it more with our kind of initial, this is like our focus group, if you will. We're developing this together. We consider it like a pre-launch, Shannon.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yes. And I was just going to say, if, Carol, kind of what we're doing is we want people to watch those 2 videos. And if they feel inspired to be a part of the movement and want to help what we're doing here, then yes. But your internal neighbors network, that's going to be what you're internally doing. That's going to be for you. So we'll guide you. And maybe, I'm big on getting a couple people to help. I know, Richard, we haven't talked about that. I don't like to do things alone. So I've already identified a neighbor. I'm going to be like, hey, will you help me do this so that I can do it with somebody? But this really is it. We're in a lab right now.
Okay.
Richard, was that in line with what you're thinking?
Absolutely. Thanks, Carol.
Thanks.
And so I did put in there the documents. It says Neighbors for Neighbors guide and templates. Richard created the Word docs, and we would love if you create your own, please share them with us so that we can, start having various templates to add and create. Any other questions or successes? Carol, congratulations on getting it going. Okay, do we want to move on to the next thing? Going once?
Or is this? Oh, we're in Q&A.
Yeah, any other Q&A? Go ahead.
If we've got some time, if there's no more questions, I could share a little bit more about this.
I have a question. I have a question about, and you're aware of this, like Tom Stilley at the River School Farm and the co-op. They've been collaborating for years on the leftovers that when you left. They still gathered together and are continually collaborating and networking together. So are those the people that are the targets for the first?
It's a great question.
Redefinement here.
So that brings up a really interesting question. So Jim was asking about how does an organization participate in Neighbors for Neighbors? And Jimmy, that brings up a complexity I'm not sure we're ready to deal with, but that's awesome that they had continued to do that activity. Right now, we're focusing on individuals to activate streets. And at some point, I believe we can have an offering for what organizations could do. That's a great question. Thank you.
Richard, I would imagine they could come to the party though, right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm calling all gatherings parties. That's probably not the right word, but so I would imagine you could invite them to.
Yeah, that's true. Anybody else have a question?
Right.
Hey, Shannon, this is Bob.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can't, my chat says it's disabled. Is that just me or is it everybody's chat disabled?
Are you on a phone?
It's
Yeah.
disabled.
I'm on a phone, yeah.
The chat is disabled.
Joy
Okay.
Grace, it's disabled on a cell phone.
Oh, okay. That would
On a cell
explain
phone.
it. Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you.
Okay.
I got you. Also, well, let's move on to the next item. Thank you, everybody. And we look forward to hearing more of your successes. Can we make sure everybody's muted? I think, okay, excellent. So we started talking about this next scale, which is building a local food system network in a region. And we're focusing, at least in the United States, the geographic area is the county level. Let's go to the next slide. So as we discussed before, I think it's important, repetition, for those of you that's seen this before, it's important that these new concepts and ideas, that we repeat them for new people, as well as kind of reinforcing what it is we're talking about. So a local food system network, it's different than just having a food system. It's an active process that's regenerative and market-based. So you're bringing together organizations and businesses to actually increase the local farm, ranch, and value-added production of food locally in your region and consumption of food. So it's increasing both the production and consumption. Those are measurable things that over a period of years you can measure, is this actually happening? So it's tangible. And the way to do this is to first map and then connect all the elements of that food system into a coherent marketplace that's helping a region to become increasingly more resilient and food self-sufficient. And today we're continuing on our journey of mapping. And the last thing I'd like to say is it's important to know that this is inclusive. These networks are inclusive of both conventional and regenerative forms of agriculture. So it's, while the aim is to develop more permaculture and regenerative ag processes over time, when you form a network like this, it's inclusive of all types of agriculture. The priority is on increasing food production, is now and will be continually a challenge. And that's what this is all about, as well as, you know, broader issues of sustainability. Let's go to the next slide. So when you build a symbiotic network, it's intentional and it's purposeful. It's a values-based network. And remember that we're applying the principle of intentional mutual benefit, and we're building a culture around that, both individually, on our street, through our activities in neighborhoods, as well as through these broader networks in the community. And the key is focus on what we share in common. So we really are creating a culture, a space that we operate where we're not talking about what we disagree upon. It doesn't mean that we're just shoving it under the rug, because obviously we have disagreements on religion and politics, et cetera. But for the purpose of this kind of cultural development and organizing, we focus on what we share in common, which is uplifting the community in the ways that we've described. We're not creating a separate new organization. We're not creating that. We're creating an organism. So it's a distributed network structure, not a new legal structure like a nonprofit or for-profits, not a new silo in the community. It's a gentle network of connections in the community, and its purpose is to enhance everybody's activities. It's all about empowering each other in the community. And it's I guess what you would call a servant leadership. It's a leadership focused on giving first rather than on receiving, knowing that as we give, we certainly, even though we don't know how and what form that we will receive, we know that that's going to happen. We trust in that. And maybe most important for everybody is it doesn't take a whole lot of time to do this. It's hard to believe, but it's true. And then, oh, we have for the German speakers, we have the infographic with a character there. Anyway, let's go to the next. I think we're going to the next slide now. We're going to get back into the
You wanted me to show this building a symbiotic network. So
Yeah,
let me
I just
go
want to show
ahead.
the first part of that.
Yep. Sorry, I'm getting to a different computer here. Here we go. There we go.
So what we're doing is the first part of building a symbiotic network, and this is an example of local food system, is the phase one is to identify the scattered clusters. And clusters are basically clusters of individuals, organizations, and businesses, in this case, in the food industry, in the food area. So we're talking about farmers, ranchers, restaurateurs. We're talking about food co-ops. We're talking about people that work in dealing with hunger issues like a food bank. We're talking about people that are growing food in their backyard gardeners. We're talking about community gardeners. We're talking about people that restaurants that are buying food from farmers directly. So all these connections. Clusters just means that in a normal region, people and organizations tend to form their own separate networks. And then the next part, so that's phase one. And right now, we've been discussing, as of last meeting, how to actually identify and map those clusters of organizations and people in the food sector. And then, where this is headed is within maybe 30 days of doing this analysis is to what's called a hub and spoke network, where that you right there, for example, would be Shannon within Brevard County, Florida, building a food system network. And that's after discovering and mapping her food ecosystem, is having the first meeting, maybe within the next 30 days. So let's go to the next slide. So that's the context. Actually, the next part of the presentation.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Never having done anything like this, I'm going back a little bit. How far in advance should we plan the potluck?
Okay, so that question is related to
The
other level, where there's two types of networks that we're building, and it's based on people's interests. Right now, we're talking about the food system, and maybe at the end, I could answer a question about the food system as well as the neighbor question. I think let's just, if we could focus on this, that'd be awesome. So what I'd like to do is I wanted to backtrack to last week, where we were reviewing network mapping. Let's go to the next slide. So basically, this is a reminder that we're using search strategies to map your food system. And the first is we're looking for superconnectors. Superconnectors are individuals who themselves are connected to multiple organizations in the food system. For example, last week we discovered that there's a network of community gardens in Brevard County. So the person who organized that network of community gardens in Brevard County is a superconnector, because they're connected to a ton of other leaders themselves who are doing community gardens and are leading those efforts. Number two, we want a leader who has a solid reputation in the community and capable of collaborating. The way you determine this is by initially meeting, after you do the mapping process and you develop a spreadsheet of all these leaders and organizations that are operating there. Once you start meeting with the people, you will get a sense of whether they actually have a good reputation in the community. You'll also get a sense personally when you meet them one-on-one of whether they have a potential of collaborating. And we're going to get into that a little bit later today in the presentation about how you determine that. So 3 and 4, we're trying to overall increase local agricultural production and consumption in the same region to really build that local food supply chain. It's our part in dealing with the insecurity of what's happening globally. We can do that locally. This is being done in a ton of communities at different levels. We're taking it to the next level in terms of really focusing on getting everybody together. both producers and consumers. And we're going to talk about that in a sec. And number 5, it's for those of you that have built organizations or businesses, this is kind of the reciprocal or opposite of a competitive market analysis. Like if you're starting a business in a community and you're thinking, well, is anybody else doing that? Should I start my business or not? This is literally the opposite. This is like, gosh, I'm really hoping that there's a ton of people doing the same stuff. All these restaurants that are local restaurants, I really hope that there's a ton of farmers and ranchers, and I really hope that they're collaborating already so that I could find clusters and do a collaborative market analysis, imagining a mass collaboration across all the silos that we've created. So let's go to the search screen, and then I guess we're getting back up to speed where we left off, and then we can continue.
Yes. Okay. So
let's just do that. Maybe the Google search of Brevard County and local food system network.
yep. Okay. Just one moment. Brevard County.
So this is
local
important as a training video that we actually
food
show this, even though it's repetitive for some of you, we're including it again. So this is interesting. So by using Brevard there, local food systems came up. We already saw that one. That's the city of Orlando, which is part of Orange County, which is an adjacent county to Brevard County. The next is the Florida Department of Ag and Consumer Services, even though that's a state level link, the second link there that's now at the top, if you could hold, yeah, just where it says Florida Department of Ag, the second link, that's an example of where you can get more information. And if you keep going down, you'll see environmental health services from Brevard. That's actually from Brevard County. There you'll be able to find linkages. Governmental agencies, county agencies, many times will have lists of local food providers, people interested in food security. So those are really valuable. And the next one, this will be the last one, we don't have to click it, but it says Mutual Aid Brevard. We haven't done this, Shannon, but another way of discovery, we don't have to do it today, is what I did in Northern Nevada was I literally documented every Facebook group and every Facebook page of every food related organization. And what that did was got me access to all these existing fans of pages. For example, it could be that when we discovered that network of community gardens in Brevard County, it could be that they have a Facebook page that they're actually communicating with their fans. And once this thing goes public later, it's always good to have access to all those folks and organizations. So, okay, that is the review, and I think we're ready to go on to the next slide.
Sorry, I'm bouncing around here.
Yeah, that's okay. I think we're gonna right now get into sharing where you're at. Let's see. Yep, and then yep. So next steps. So let's look at your spreadsheet.
Perfect.
And for those of you who weren't here last week, we started this discovery process. Shannon's been updating her spreadsheet.
And now I'm going to add Facebook groups because I didn't have that. Last time we added the types, and we've started that, Richard.
So now if you look at the second column, Shannon is, organizing her spreadsheet into it's going to be eventually categorized in producers and consumers. So producers are, let's go through this, farmers, ranchers, people that are producing value-added products, and backyard farmers. They're all producers. They're all producing, food products for a region. Consumers aren't just individual people. What we mean by consumers here, we're not talking about us as people, going shopping at a farmer's market or store. We're talking about the organizations and business consumers. So farmers markets, we want them to consume, or we want them to to purchase as much as they can local farmers, ranchers' products to distribute at farmers markets, grocers. We want them and encourage them to, as much as they can, add local products, food products to the stores in your community. Food co-ops, same thing. Institutional buying, there we're talking about in our inaugural meeting of our food system network in Northern Nevada in 2006, we had the chief buyer from the county school district. They had 60,000 children that they were buying food and they could buy locally. Organizations purchase food, businesses, schools, et cetera, and restaurants. Those are some examples of consumers. So now I believe we're going to go to the next step here. You want to go back to the sheet? There we go. So just to review, is that since last time we've started to organize this spreadsheet in terms of categories, both as a section on producers and on consumers. We've created a column to label what the particular organization is. They're a farmer, they're a grocer, and are they organizations? So that really helps us in this process. So we're starting to get ready to organize this information beyond that, which is how do we determine who to contact first? Because the next step is, once you've done your research, once you've identified clusters, once you've identified organizations in your food system, how do you know who to connect up with first? Because this starts by personal connection, one-to-one, meeting farmers, meeting ranchers, meeting others that are producing products, as well as meeting potential leaders of restaurant associations, et cetera. So that's the question, is how do you find that? How do you do that? And also, what do you say to them when you visit? What's the context? Why are you calling them? So let's go back to this.
Richard, I just wanted to share real quick what I did here was I actually outsourced this researching and found somebody for like $3 to $5 an hour, and I've done it, and Debbie's helped, and we've had a community help do this. But in the beginning, I just gave some search items, and I actually had somebody go and do it for me. So
okay,
just wanted to let you know in case somebody's. Okay, next slide. I think we are.
So then the question is, let's go back a slide. So you may ask, like, okay, well, what do we tell the people we're connecting with once we've mapped the food system? So I'll share one story quickly. The very first person that I contacted was a farmer whose family's been doing farming for 100 years in the region. So they really had a high reputation. And I simply called them on the phone and I said, hi, my name is Richard. And, in this case, I was a business person. I said, I'm really interested in helping to strengthen our food system. And I know that you're a farmer and your family's been in the business for so long. I'm really like to explore with you developing a local food system network where we connect all the producers and consumers so we can grow and consume more food locally. That's literally what I said. And the answer I got from him was, I am already doing it. So then I started asking him questions. I said, well, tell me, are you selling the produce you're growing into the urban area, farmers markets? No. Are you selling your produce directly, like community supported agriculture, subscription farming? No. Do you sell them your produce to grocery stores? No. Well, then I said, well, what do you do? He said, well, I make one product and I sell it wholesale out of the region. So this is a farmer who had zero connection to the local food system, and yet he thought he was already doing a food system network. What he meant was he was connected to a ton of other farmers professionally in his region, and that was his network. When I explained this to him and I made it simple, and I asked him whether he's interested in making these local connections, he was excited about it. So he agreed to a first meeting with others who became the first group of super connectors in the food system. And that's an example of, you know, how you reach out. And I know I think we've kind of come up to the time. We should, let's see if we can open up for a few quick questions. We definitely are time challenged.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much. And those of you that have to go, thank you for spending your time here. Make sure you save the chat. There is three dots when you open it up on the right-hand side, and you can hit save chat, and it automatically goes into a Zoom file. You'll have the links of everything that we've worked on. Join us next Friday. Now we're going to open it up for Q&A, really focused on the food network system or something about symbiotic culture. And so go ahead and let us know if you have any questions. And I'm going to share that form again, that if you haven't joined our communication connection place, make sure that you fill that out. Anybody have any questions? Debbie.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have a script for that? Because those are things that I would have normally say, or should I go back, listen to the recording and write it out?
We're going to listen to the recording, Debbie. Sorry, we're going to listen to the recording and write it out.
Okay.
Yeah, what we're going to do is Shannon and I will work on that this week, and Debbie would love your help and the team there in Brevard County to help with, you know, coming up with a script for the first time when you reach out, and then how to anticipate what you know, some of the folks might say in response. Prepare.
Awesome. I had a question, Richard. When I was going through this, I was trying to determine what's the difference between a farmer and a rancher.
So great question. It's arbitrary, but farmer is their production is agriculture.
Okay. And a
like
rancher
tomatoes,
is
lettuce. A rancher is producing
cows,
cattle. They have
chicken.
cattle, chickens
things with legs. Okay.
Horses.
So one has legs, one has.
Okay, there you go.
One does not. Okay.
That's a great question.
But I do have this.
Anybody else who hasn't asked a question? Just one second, Debbie. I just want to see if there's anybody that has a question before we close. It looks like everybody is really happy, or maybe they're sleeping. I don't know.
Jim. Jim, go ahead.
Or Debbie.
Oh, you're muted.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, go ahead, Jim.
Okay. I'm clicking around all over the place and forgot what I was going to ask, but I think it had to do with the pre-existing networks that are there, that are in control of the larger amounts of food coming through that's imported and exported. How does this bottom-up grassroots affect when it comes against the competition from top down? There's going to be some kind of a connection that happens. How is the communication going to work so that the top down might want to buy in and be a part of it and see the bigger picture? How do you?
Absolutely. I'm going to give you a case study in Oahu, where we live as an island with Honolulu as a big city. Historically, the state of Hawaii used to be food independent,
Right.
And it wasn't taken over by, you know, the United States. There were 3 million people here. They had food systems that fed everybody. Today, the orientation is primarily for production for commercial use, so that the tourists that are coming here who go to hotels and eat in restaurants. So it's not, most of the production is for export and for tourist visiting. Therefore, Hawaii is 90% dependent on external sources of food, like many, many counties in the United States and elsewhere. So the answer to your question is these systems, like in this case, that's a strong financial incentive to not produce locally because of the way the economy is.
All right.
But in our experience in moving forward with building a food system network on this island, there's a lot of interest, even in the government, to do it anyway. They've just not been able to do it themselves. So there's been an effort by the government to build a food system network 20 years ago, but they've never succeeded because they don't know how to do these things. They're political. Therefore, that's not the government's role. Doesn't mean the government's not interested in supporting it, especially if at the grassroots, that is leaders like local farmers and ranchers and others coming together. So the way we handle this kind of conflict is in the organizing of the local food system network, say here in Oahu. We'll make sure that we're cognizant of that, and we invite some of the players who've been involved from the government prior to this to be involved.
Right.
So that they're not so that's it's totally transparent, it's upfront, it's not against them at all, it's for something else that they can't do themselves. That was a great question. Thank you, Jim.
It's beyond their mindset. So if you lay it out and put it in their mindset, there's a good chance they'll come over to it. They'll see the value.
Absolutely right. And that's what I've seen time and time again. Thanks again. Does anybody have any other final questions?
I do. I have one final question. We have an organization that's been working at raising money, and they're a food co-op, a local owned community food co-op. And I was just looking up the director, or, I don't know his title, but number one on the list as far as the organization goes. And I would like to start to build that friendship. So that's how I'm communicating with them. Is there any specific thing I should say that would make a difference, especially in this particular situation?
That's a great question, and it's related to Debbie's and Shannon's question in Brevard County. Carol, where are you located?
I live in the suburbs of Chicago.
Okay, excellent. So Symbiotic Culture Lab, it's a lab, it's a laboratory, because we're all involved together to take this idea that works, that I've discovered over decades of use, and to develop this together, working together, side by side, sharing what works, best practices together. So what we need to do is, while Debbie and Shannon were working on the script that they're ready to do, maybe within the next couple of weeks in Brevard County, we'll make sure that you're in that loop for that conversation.
Okay.
So that we can share that information so that you can participate and benefit from what they're doing. Shannon, any other response to that?
Yeah, I just know that we're eager. So yeah, we'll probably do that real soon. And Carol, you're really good. I know that you work with me on developing language and pitch. So you may have some ideas that you want to contribute. I know that's a gift that you have also.
Yeah.
This is an example of, once we have our media channels so that we can actually communicate with each other, this would be an example of what would be shared in a chat, and people can easily develop this together simply by different messaging systems. Anyway, I think that's probably enough, right? It's 9:08. I think we went over. I want to be sensitive to people's time so they didn't feel like they're trapped. And
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah. And do you mind? I know Debbie had one more question
yeah.
about that. And I believe Karen had one more question. Are you okay answering just a couple more? And
yeah,
if people need
let's
to
do
go,
it.
they
If
can.
people are okay to.
If you need to go, we love you.
Yeah, mine was a quick statement. I know a director of agriculture and a ranch that they're combined. So I'm going to talk to him to make sure I get the right lingo to attract them to us.
Well, yeah, that sounds really good. I think it might be best for you, for Shannon and yourself, Debbie, and me let's just talk about it, and then have alignment on it. That sounds great. If you have a friend, and maybe first get them involved and enroll them in this vision for a local food system network in your county.
Okay, and Debbie, you had a neighborhood question real quick, and then I know Karen had some.
Planning the potluck. How far out do you usually plan? I've never done anything like this.
You know, it's really interesting. If people are ready to go, they could do it quickly. Like
In 2
I wrote,
weeks.
I wrote an op-ed for our local newspaper, and in like 2 weeks, we had 50 gatherings. So 30 days is probably optimal. And then with reminders. So 30 days in the sense of, build your core team, develop your flyer, agree on with your team on a date, set the date, get your flyer, and then have that out 30 days. And then maybe within a week, start going door to door to meet people and just give them the flyer for announcing the event. And then do a follow-up as well with them.
Okay,
Beautiful.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Karen, one thing that we were going to talk about today that was really important, I just wanted to remember, is that we wanted to remind everybody to start growing now. Start growing in your backyard. Like start planting, growing, we grow enough to share. Find those things that you have a green thumb for and share them. Richard, anything else you want to add to that before we move on to
No, that's a perfect reminder, is that we actually, even though all of us aren't necessarily building whole food systems, we're part of a food system. If we're already backyard gardeners, I know we are, and we have plans given the type of soil and where we are to grow more since we just moved here.
Awesome. Karen.
I just had a quick comment. The potlucks, I have a friend that has a flower farm. We have potlucks the third Thursday of every month. So it has grown and grown and grown from like 5 people to 30 people. So you could start it anytime you want if you're going to do it monthly, because, it grows. And the other brilliant thought, I think, maybe, is to find someone running for office, as what's happening right now in November, and share this with them, because they're out there in the communities, they're dropping flyers, they're doing door to door, they're raising money, they're those kind of people. So when they're looking for a way to shine in their communities, if you find somebody who's running for some kind of office in your community, you could like jump on their tails and support them. I just thought it was a cool idea. I have 3 friends running for office. I'm like, this would be great for them.
It's the kind of flip side of that is that, and early on, we try to keep this out of any kind of electoral politics, people running for office,
Right.
unless all of them are exposed to it.
They care about their
In other
community.
words, whether if depending on the kind of office it is, if it's on party lines, then it's kind of divisive. If they're
Right.
like nonpartisan offices, I would say just make sure everybody is, so there's no special treatment.
Right.
You're just basically telling them that they're a distribution channel to get the word out, so that the neighbors themselves do these activities. But
I'm
politicians,
still not into
as you know,
politics. I missed that. You would hope.
yeah, the politics, they're just, face it, we're in a culture of dominion and domination. That's all they want to do. It doesn't matter whether how good their intention is. I get it, but the system is designed for them to just basically create a dependency on us. They want us to, they're telling us vote for them so they can do something for us. Well, what we're saying is we don't really care what you're doing for us, because we're doing something for ourselves.
Right. Well, I
So
have 3 girlfriends that are trying to make a change, and this would be great for them. But you're right. I don't get involved.
As long as they support this, now that would be a first, to get the politicians to say, we support neighbors who are becoming independent of us as politicians. We want to encourage our communities to grow so that you don't need us. How's that? Would that be a great platform?
Women are that mindset. So let more power to them. Yeah.
Is that true? That would be awesome if they could say that.
Wouldn't it be?
Vote for us so you don't need us anymore.
Love it. So we can govern you in a way. No, not govern you. Never mind. All right. Thank you.
We'll figure it out. Hey, that's a cool question. Thank you for asking it, Karen.
It's a dream.
Thank you. Well, we look forward to seeing everybody next week. I think that's it. And thank you guys for staying over. Thank you, Richard, so much for all your hard work. And thank you, Marta, for, with every brilliant man, there's a strong woman. And so we're just so appreciative of this. And so we'll see you guys next week. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Remember to save the chat.
Yep. Thanks, everybody.